In the heart of savannah, where the sun kisses the earth each morning, lies a timeless village. The air is thick with the fragrance of red soil, and the rustling leaves of ancient baobab trees whisper secrets to the wind. There lived a beautiful young woman named Adubi. She was born under the watchful gaze of the baobab tree, her cries harmonizing with the rustling leaves. But fate, that fickle weaver, had other plans for her. Adubi's parents were really successful merchants, known throughout the village and the other neighboring villages too. One unforgiving night, when the moon hid behind a thick curtain of clouds, tragedy struck. A raging fever swept through the village, stealing life like a greedy spirit. Adubi's parents succumbed, leaving her an orphan before she could even string together a full sentence. The villagers whispered that Adubi was cursed, a child abandoned by the gods. And because of this, nobody wanted to do with her except the old loyal maid who worked for her parents before their death, Ireti, who saw something different in her eyes, a spark of deviance, a stubbornness that refused to be snuffed out. Ireti took Adubi under her wing and kept the fortune Adubi's parents left behind for her until Adubi was old enough to make important life decisions. So Adubi, under the watch and care of Ireti, grew up to be a wise and passionate woman. As Adubi's parents were very successful and they had left everything they had in her name, and now Adubi was known for being the most richest youngest woman in the whole of the village. From an early age, love had been both Adubi's muse and tormentor. She believed in the magic of moonlight dances and whispered promises. But life, like the unpredictable savannah winds, had other plans. Each time Adubi opened her heart, it was met with betrayal. And whenever she was betrayed, her best friend, Bosse, would always cheer her on to try again. Bosse had been Adubi's best friend for a long time, but Ireti didn't approve of the friendship. She didn't like Bosse for some reasons and had always tried to chase her far away as possible from Adubi, but all to no avail. One of the men Adubi was betrayed by was Dele. Dele was a warrior with eyes like the midnight sky. His laughter echoed the acacia trees, and Adubi danced to its rhythm. Dele and Adubi shared stolen moments beneath the baobab tree. Their love a secret whispered to the stars. But one moonless night, Adubi suddenly overheard Dele talking to himself about his evil plan. Because Adubi was really wealthy, Dele had pretended to love her so he could marry her and share part of her properties. Adubi was heartbroken and disappointed. She broke it off with Dele right there and then. Few months later, Adubi decided to open up her heart again. And that was when she took notice of Odejimi. Odejimi was a storyteller, his words weaving tales of ancient spirit and forbidden love. Adubi fell for his eloquence, believing that their souls were entwined across lifetimes. But Odejimi's stories were not confined by parchment. They spilled into reality. Adubi, even though desperate to love, was taking her time, but other Jimmy wanted to rush through everything and get married to Aduni in a short amount of time. Too short, Aduni began to question his decision and love for her. Adubi declined and suggested they take more time to find each other, and Odejimi agreed. But not too long after, Adubi heard rumors of Odejimi getting married to another woman in the village. It was also stated that Odejimi was in love with someone else all along and just wanted Adubi for her fortune. Adubi became a silent witness to her own heartaches. For a long time, Adubi was a stranger of her former self. She's so depressed and dejected. She didn't even move around her house. She lived like a stranger in her own house. Bosse had tried to persuade or take her mind off everything, but Adubi remained the same no matter how hard she tried. Ireti too had tried everything she could, but Adubi was still downcast. Until one day, Bosse came to Adubi with an idea. The idea was for Adubi to travel to a whole new village, not the neighboring, but a village far away from theirs. And in that village, Adubi would pretend to be someone else. She would take nothing else with her except a few clothes. Then maybe she would find a true lover. Ireti was not in support of the idea, and she advised Adubi, but Adubi had made up her mind, so she remained unshakable. Adubi had her own plans in mind. She wasn't going to the village to find love. She was going to the village to spend some time away from home. She was so done with love, the thought of it makes her rage. So Adubi prepared her luggage and set out on a journey. Adubi journeyed a few days before arriving at her destination. She chose the village because it was a small population and a peaceful nature. Its wind carried secrets from distant lands. Adubi was a very lovable person, so she was quick to settle into the village and make friends. With the help of the villagers, Adubi started a small farm beside her house. There she spent most of her time there planting and harvesting vegetables. Few months goes by and Adubi was still happy and healthy in the village. It felt like her mother's land. One evening, while Adubi was walking on her farmland, she felt a pair of eyes on her, and she immediately turned her attention towards the feeling. Not too far from where she was a good-looking and tall man named Femi. Femi smiled at Adubi and waved. Adubi smiled and waved back, although she hadn't seen Femi before since her stay here. The next day, Adubi saw Femi again and he smiled and waved just like yesterday. Adubi did the same. Adubi saw him again the next day, and the next day, and the next, until it became a little gesture that Adubi always looked forward to it every day. One fateful day, while Adubi was attending to her crops, as usual, she heard a voice behind her. She turned immediately and saw Femi smiling and looking down at her. "Hello." Adubi froze for a moment at the sound of his voice. It has a melodic symphony that resonates through the chambers of the heart. His voice is like a velvet timbre, rich and warm, like the first sip of tea on a chilly evening. "Aye," Adubi replied and smiled shyly. And so Adubi and Femi began their tight companionship from there. They became each other's confidants. Femi was an orphan like Adubi, and even though he was a sailor and his job requires him to travel every now and then, Adubi didn't mind. Femi was too perfect. He knew what Adubi wanted before he asked. He always made her happy. Adubi was so elated because finally the search is over. Femi is the man of her dreams. Or so she thought. 2 weeks passed and Adubi and Femi were still going strong. Until one day, while Adubi was on her way to the market to sell her crops, like she always did, whenever she made a good harvest, someone bumped into her out of nowhere, making her tip over her vegetables to the dirty ground. Adubi was infuriated as she stared at the man bent down in front of her, picking up her wares while apologizing to her. "It's fine," Adubi replied with a hint of irritation as she collected her basket and walked away. On her way back from the market, she met that same man sitting at the roadside quietly. When the man saw Adubi, he stood up immediately and called out for her. Adubi ignored him, thinking he was one of those irksome men going after women and pestering them in the village. But the man didn't stop calling out to her until Adubi snapped and warned him not to come any closer. But this man wasn't one to give up easily. He kept on wandering and waiting patiently around the market path for Adubi. Whenever Adubi goes to the market, she would see the man by the roadside waiting for her. He didn't give up despite all the warnings from Adubi until he finally won her friendship. The first thing Adubi told him was, "I can be your friend, but just know that my heart belongs to another man, and you don't stand a chance. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. I've been seeing you for quite some time, and thank the heavens I finally get to talk to you. My name is Boyega. You are Adubi, right?" Adubi was shocked as she replied, "How did you know my name?" "Ah, you are quite popular here." Adubi laughed and said, "Really? I didn't know that." And thus began the beginning of a lovely and intentional friendship between Adubi and Adegboyega. One evening, while Adubi was on her way back from the stream, she saw a familiar male figure running through the thick bushy woods. Adubi froze as the figure got closer. She screamed in fear as a clay pot dropped from her head and onto the ground when someone jumped out of the bush. And that person turned out to be Femi. "Femi!" Adubi yelled when she saw who the person was. Femi was taken aback when he saw Adubi. Adubi got really suspicious of him, as he had told her earlier that he was going to his friend's house only for Adubi to find him lurking in the woods. But Femi soothed her, reassured her not to overthink, as he reminded her he loved her and would get married to her when the time is right. The following days, the friendship between Adubi and Boyega continued to grow strong and healthy. Some days, Boyega would visit Aduni and would help her in her farm. But after Boyega had killed a few of her crops, they both decided it wasn't for the farming life. Basically, Adubi noticed that Boyega wasn't for the regular life. Even though he tried his best, Adubi knew there was more to this man than meets the eyes. Adubi kept on watching him until she ultimately decided to ask him, "Boyega, who really are you?" Boyega was shocked at the question, but he remained silent. You don't have to lie because I've caught you red-handed. Okay, I'll tell you. So Gboyega started narrating how he was not originally from that village. He came from another town to search for love. Back in his town, he had many girls willing to be his wife, but he could see through every one of their schemes, and he knew they only wanted him for who he is and what he has. So he turned them all down and decided against getting married altogether. But his friend, who is a priest from his village, advised him and told him he would need to go on a long journey to another village before he could find the woman who would give him peace of mind and would love him for who he is and not what he has. So that's why I'm here, Gboyega concluded. What about you? He turned towards Adubi and asked. Adubi was confused as she never told him she wasn't from here. Gboyega laughed as he washed her wrinkled brows. Oh, so you don't know you've given it away a long time ago? Adubi, I know you're not from here, so tell me your own story. Adubi sighed and narrated her own story word for word to him. She told him about how she had been betrayed many times by the people she claimed to be in love with, and she had given up on love. But her best friend, back in her own village, also advised her to go on a long journey in search of her husband. As Adubi and Gboyega shared their most deepest secret, their bond grew more stronger. They promised to visit their villages together. As Femi was on one of his many work trips, Adubi decided to visit Gboyega's village. So they set out together and journeyed for days until they got to the village. They got to Gboyega's village in the late hours of the night, and Adubi decided that Gboyega was so cautious of his environment. He tried his best to avoid the villagers, and the villagers he couldn't avoid, he would try to ignore or stop them as they bow to him. Adubi began to panic as she watched on. He did like that up until they got to a beautiful hut. There, a young priest who looked to be the same age as Gboyega was outside the hut. He looked like he was meditating. Shoyebi, Gboyega called out to the priest. Shoyebi looked up towards the voice and was really delighted to see his friend with a guest, a female guest. Shoyebi welcomed them in warmly. They spent a few days in the village, and on the day they were about to leave, Shoyebi came to meet Adubi and Gboyega where they sat, and in an instant, he said to Adubi, "Young lady, you are in the midst of enemies. You have a lot of people after your peace, and all you have. You have to be careful as they are closer to you than you know." The priest started. Adubi was somewhat puzzled as she asked the priest for further clarification. The priest only gave Adubi a ring and instructed her to wear the ring whenever she wished to know the culprit around her. Adubi thanked him greatly as she and Gboyega set off on their journey. They got back to their village, and that was when Adubi decided it was time for her to take things to the next level. It was time to take Femi back to her own village to get married. Adubi talked about it with him and he agreed immediately. So Adubi and Femi journeyed to Adubi's village. Bose was overjoyed when she saw Adubi and Femi. Ireti was happy too, but she also thought Adubi's husband looked familiar. After thinking about it for some time, and seeing how Adubi looked happier and healthier, she waved it off as old age taking a toll on her. So Bose, Ireti, and some hired villagers started the wedding preparations. Few days later, the wedding day was finally here and everyone was thrilled. Boyega had also arrived at Adubi's village for the wedding. He sat at a far end, almost away from everybody. As the ceremony commenced and the priest began the usual ritual, Femi started to feel uneasy. Adubi asked him a couple of times if he was okay and he reassured her he was okay. But with his behavior, it was obvious that he was far from being okay. Stop! Stop the wedding! Femi suddenly yelled out from his seat. He was covered in beads of sweat and his eyes were bloodshot. Adubi was about to stop him when she suddenly remembered she touched him while she was wearing the ring. That was when it dawned on her. But she was still confused as she thought Femi is one of the enemies. It was at that time that Femi started to confess. He said he didn't love Adubi all along and he only wanted her for her properties, just like every other man. And he had planned with his girlfriend, Bose, who was Adubi's best friend. Adubi didn't even stand up from her chair. She only looked on in deep hatred and disappointment. Femi continued. He said he planned that Bose should send Adubi to another village to try to find love, while he would pose as the man Adubi would fall in love with. And then they would get married, and when he gets his hand on her fortune, he would leave her and run away with Bose. That was when Ireti spoke up. Hey, I know I have seen your face somewhere before. I saw you with Bose at the village well. Bose was already on her knees in front of Adubi, crying as she wailed. He tricked me. He tricked me. Adubi, my friend, don't listen to him, please. Adubi stared down at the ring on her finger and brushed Bose's shoulders with it lightly. And that was when Bose began to confess to her own side of the story. He told me about the plan, and because I was in love with him and didn't want to lose him to someone else, I went along with the plan. I swear, Adubi, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was blinded by love. Adubi, please. Adubi smiled and scoffed. I should have known right from the start that I'm a cursed child. And as a cursed child, why do I think I would have a happy life or a happy ending? And with that, Adubi stood up slowly amidst the crowd and walked away. Ireti saw to it that Bose and Femi got banished from the village. Boyega, who had been listening and watching everything play out, followed Adubi. There he embraced her as she poured her heart out to him. For the next few days, Boyega stayed back in Adubi's village to help her get her happiness back. Ireti was in full support of Adubi getting married to Boyega, even though they've not even talked about the marriage yet. She loved how patient, good-looking, and intentional Boyega is, and she would always give him big pieces of meat whenever she cooked dinner. Months goes by, and gradually, Adubi began to get herself back, and that was when Boyega popped the question. He asked Adubi to be his wife, but Adubi bluntly refused, but Boyega didn't give up. Just like the last time, he gave it some time to cool off and popped the question again. Boyega knew Adubi liked him, but she's been trying to deny it for the sake of being betrayed again. She was scared of having heartbreak again. Boyega popped the question again, and this time Adubi accepted But she made him swear with the God of iron that he wouldn't betray or break her heart. The man immediately did as she wished, and Adubi was happy and encouraged. Gboyega instantly invited Adubi to his village again, but this time he wasn't guarded or cautious about his surroundings. He walked and held Adubi's hands confidently. The villagers who passed by him all bowed and said, "Welcome, my prince." That was when Adubi realized that Gboyega was a prince and he hadn't told her at all. Adubi kept quiet as she got to the beautiful palace and met his family. The royal family all loved her and approved of the marriage at once. The wedding was the talk of the village and all other neighboring villages. Adegboyega, the prince of Iye village, is getting married to a woman from another village. The wedding was successful and Adubi and Gboyega finally got to be alone on their wedding night. Adubi playfully hit Gboyega ham as she said, "So you lied to me, Gboyega? Sorry, Aremo Adegboyega." Gboyega laughed and said, "I didn't want to scare you away." Adubi laughed too and Gboyega continued seriously. He said his friend, the priest who Adubi met in his village when they came visiting her, told him that he had to go on a journey to find his wife and the woman who the creator had destined for him. The priest also said when he finds his woman, he would tell in his heart. Gboyega did how Shoyebi, the priest, said and journeyed to another village. Few days after he got there was when he bumped into Adubi on the way to the market. That was when his heart started pounding uncontrollably when he saw her. Just like the priest said, Gboyega knew in his heart that Adubi was his wife, his woman. And he didn't stop until he got her. Adubi giggled and said, "Why if I had gotten married to Femi?" Gboyega sighed and replied jokingly, "Why do you think I took you to the village to meet the priest?" He paused and said in all seriousness, "I would have adopted you." They both laughed out loud. Adubi rested her head on his shoulder as she listened to his story. So the adage which says your enemy's evil scheme can push you to your place of destiny is true. Gboyega agreed with a nod. If Bosse had not told me to journey to another village, I would never have met you. As Adubi said that, she pulled Gboyega closer to herself as they embraced each other. The end. Do not forget to comment your favorite part of the story and what you have learned from the story. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like the story. And also look forward to more interesting and educative stories. Thanks for watching. Bye.